Wishing and Hoping by Dolan. Read by Annie Aldington. Chapter 1. 1969. There were sparks and lightning, and Michael was in trouble. She smelled something burning. She saw someone blind, and, worst of all, she found herself parted from her husband. No! Marcie Jones sat bolt upright in bed, gasping for breath, and drenched in sweat. Her husband lay beside her, and he stirred himself awake, his voice groggy and confused at being disturbed. "Marcie, what is it? Were you having a nightmare?" Resting her hand on her chest, she felt her racing heart. "I thought I heard Aaron crying," she lied, unwilling to admit to him that he was right, that she had indeed been dreaming, and the dream had seemed so real. Aaron was their son, and only a few months old, a brother for Joanna, who wasn't Michael's child, though he had raised her as his own. When Joanna had been born, Marcie was a single mum, Marcie Brooks, rather than the respectable Mrs. Michael Jones. Joanna's father had been Marcie's first love, Johnny, who had been killed in a road accident before he could make good on his promise to marry her. Raising himself on one elbow, her husband strained to hear their son. There was no crying, no sound at all. There never had been. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I can't hear anything." Marcie gave a short, light laugh. "I must be hearing things. He's such a good kid," she said, as she snuggled herself back beneath the bedclothes and hugged her husband's warm body. "Takes after his dad," said Michael. If Michael could have seen her expression, he would have realised that Marcie had been lying about having heard the baby crying. Marcie laughed again, though more relaxed, the dream behind her. "Get some sleep," he murmured sleepily, stroking her arm as he closed his eyes. "We've got a long day tomorrow." She lay there listening to his breathing as it softened into sleep, half afraid to go back to sleep herself in case the dream returned. For 4 nights now she'd had that same dream, and was convinced it was some kind of warning, a foretaste of things to come. Up until now she'd never admitted, even to herself, that she may have inherited her grandmother's gift for seeing things other people could not see. Michael might think she was a little touched if she did. In time things might change, but for now... She looked at her husband, so peacefully asleep. She loved him, and was very proud of him. Tomorrow night would see the official opening of Michael's first nightclub, the Blue Genie. Marcie was to flick the switch that would turn on the neon light above the door. The neon depicted a blue genie rising out of a brass lamp. Like moths to a flame, the customers would be drawn by its bright blue gleam and the female and very sexy genie. Marcie had suggested that it was slightly lurid, but Michael had persisted. "They're not coming to a church bazaar after all," he'd said. "We're not selling apple pies and cups of tea. We're selling a dream. A few hours of fantasy." She had to agree with him. There would be drinking, gambling, and scantily clad hostesses. It was all a little worrying. Her husband would sometimes be there without her, though he insisted they didn't interest him. She trusted him because she had to. They had a family in common. Besides, they really loved each other, didn't they? "I've only got eyes for you, Marcie. Surely you should know that." His words and the look in his eyes had been reassuring. The concerns were buried at the back of her mind. It wasn't easy to compartmentalise family life and business, but the older she got, the more pragmatic she was. Business was business, and Michael Jones had done very well for himself. He'd started his business buying up, tidying up, and renting out commercial property. To his and everyone else's surprise, he'd found little competition in the commercial property marketplace. Then he'd come across the disused warehouse in Limehouse, not far from the river.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?